Good morning, everyone, and thank you for listening in today to my talk. So what I'll be talking to you about today is disrupting traditions, and I've called it 2.0 because I'm going to be taking you through a talk about transformation through design thinking and COVID-19. So this is just a little bit of an update of a previous talk I did while pre-COVID times, and also how our organization has been able to adapt to this new thing that's come into our lives, and what we're doing to move forward with design thinking and digital transformation. So my name's Helen Arvanitopoulos. I work for Aegon, which is an insurance company out of the Netherlands. As you can see, my accent is Australian. So yes, I reside in the Netherlands working for Aegon. So let's get started. Look, I'm sure a lot of you organizations or people who are listening in are familiar with this quote. And I've always loved this quote, and I often use it when I'm talking to businesses or even people within my organization. We've always done it this way. And I'm sure you're going to say, yep, I've heard it all before. And this is because a lot of the people within my organization, and I'd more so say now, we've moved a little forward, and I'm not hearing this as much, which is great. So I think we definitely have come a long way. But the quote I was always hearing is, we've always done it this way. We don't want to change. And when you're going through digital transformations, and especially now amongst these times where you've been given a bit of a kick up the bum, you've got to move forward a little bit, and you've got to change this way of thinking. So a bit of a change into our organization I started bringing into the ways of working is design thinking. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with design thinking, but it's a process where we speak with customers or speak with people, and we're trying to get an understanding of their empathy towards certain products, certain services. And what we end up doing is looking further into how they engage with certain products, come up with some ideas, concepts, and then we nut this out. And this is a bit of a diagram of what design thinking is. So as I've just sort of mentioned, is we identify some of our customers that we are wanting to solve for, and we start empathizing. We start hearing about their problems. How are they engaging with our services? How are they engaging with our products? And we start defining the problems. We hear about what are these problems that they're having? How are they using our products? How are they using our services? And then what we're listening to, we'll start coming up with ideas, certain concepts that we can definitely prototype and design for our user based on everything that we've heard. And then as we're either going live or testing that in a testing environment, we are hearing more and more feedback, and then we're consistently updating that. So it's a never-ending process. As I like to say, design never ends. So that's why it's just continuous. It's all about understanding your user and designing for your user. So this is design thinking. And one of the great things about design thinking and my role, which is leading UX design in Aegon, is I've been able to take this thinking and incorporate it into many projects. So this project I'm going to be speaking about, which is Project SPARTA, which comes from Spain. Again, I'm going to divide this talk into pre-COVID times and now what we're doing after COVID, or it's not even after COVID, is during COVID time, because this is everything that we were doing while we were able to travel, able to speak with other countries and speak with people. So what Project SPARTA was initially about is Spain wanted a consistent digital experience, but also wanted to be mobile first. And the problem that they were having is they didn't have a great experience across all their digital platforms. And if anything, their brand was inconsistent. The messaging that they were doing was just well off the mark. And the organization had to go through a little bit of a change to make sure that what we were trying to do for our customers was in line with what they're wanting from an insurance company. So one of the things that we first started doing is we spoke to the organization. So before speaking to any customers, I needed to get a further insight into how the organization was handling this sort of project that they were wanting to solve for. So when we're saying we wanted to create this digital service that was going to be for our users, I wanted to understand what was the the problems that the organization felt that they had. And well, they're just saying to me, we need more sales. We don't have quality leads. We need to fix the purchase funnel. I was constantly hearing these sort of feedback, which didn't exactly line up to what I felt, or what I would say as what the customer was wanting. It felt like it was quite sales driven, and felt like that we weren't answering what I knew was going to be a customer need. If anything, it was just a business need. And I'm sure a lot of you as well are constantly hearing that, where we're creating these products or designs or anything further only for the organization, and never really going to the customer and understanding what it is that they need. So this was quite sales focused, and don't get me wrong, I was taking all the feedback and capturing all this data, but then what I needed to do was actually go out into and speak to the customers to understand if this messaging was resonating with everybody. So as I just sort of mentioned, if we don't listen to our customers, someone else will. So after hearing all this, it was like, guys, I understand your frustrations. I understand what you need to achieve. But if we don't listen to our customer, somebody else will. And this was, an issue that not just only happens in Aegon Spain. This happens, consistently across, did across the Aegon organization, that, we were doing a lot of changes or creating designs based on what the business was wanting, and not really getting to our customers. And I think we needed to change our mindset regarding that. So as I said, listening to your customers will always benefit the organization. So as I mentioned, bringing in design thinking. So it's not that it's new, design thinking, but within the organization, especially a traditional company, and this is why I titled this presentation Disrupting Traditions, is the organizations like an insurance company like Aegon are very familiar with the ways of working that they did pre-design or design thinking or user experience. And they're just like, what is this process that Helen's trying to incorporate? But I had to say to them, guys, I totally understand. I can understand you may not know everything about design thinking, but you have to trust me. You have to trust this process. I've done this before. It works. Obviously, comparing other brands that it's worked in the past, and you have to work with me because we have to trust this process. We will get out in the end in a positive light. I just know it. So we started with a 5-week discovery session. So if some of you don't know what discovery is, it's, as I said in the design thinking page, it's all about understanding our users and creating empathy. So what we did is, from this slide, you could see that there was a lot of focus groups. We went out onto the streets and spoke with people. We also sent out surveys nationwide across Spain. But we needed to understand and see how customers were engaging with our brand. And so when I say our brand, we would take the devices and show them our services, our site, and see how they would react in the focus groups, very similar, but then also show them the campaigns. And there was quite an inconsistent messaging or feedback that we were receiving compared to what we were hearing and what I showed earlier, which was all about sales. What the customers were saying was, well, I don't trust the brand. When you're showing the home screen, it was quite price focused, and it's like, I don't believe the price. There was an inconsistent messaging across all the devices. So as I mentioned, what we were trying to achieve was a consistency. What they were seeing on the digital devices and versus offline were so, segregated that they didn't relate to the brand. And so Aegon as a brand amongst other companies that are in Spain, they just couldn't resonate, and they felt that they couldn't trust our organization. So we needed to change that mentality for our customers. So what that meant is we had to go back to the organization and make sure that we were delivering these sort of messages to say, hey, this is what our customers are saying. What are we doing? Are we listening to them? And what are we now going to start doing? So this is the benefit of design thinking, because before we even start designing, we're just listening to our customers and speaking to them to hear, see, and feel what they're going through. So as mentioning, understanding what our business goals are, we get it, but we need to align those with our customer goals. So there's that gap that was missing, and we just need to meet in the middle. And, a lot of people may see that as an issue, time, money, but I see that as a valuable asset further down the track. So a long-term vision, so aligning business goals with customer goals. So design thinking was mentioned earlier. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with the design sprint, but it's a 4-day problem-solving process. And the thing that I love about design sprints, and I'm sure many of you have engaged in one of these workshops, is we can solve a problem quickly, effectively, with hopefully the right people in the room, and it doesn't cost money at all, really. It just requires time, as I mentioned, the right people, and people willing and eager to solve that problem. And then what we can do is test with real users and see if it's actually a product or a service that we should be designing. So we brought Design Sprint to the organization. And the whole benefit to this was not that Spain don't work together or Aegon as an organization don't work together, but what we were seeing is there was a lot of siloed business units that weren't working together. So you would see marketing and digital and brand talking in the kitchen, talking amongst the hallway. But when it came to the work, we weren't working together. So that's why when we got the feedback from the customers and there was inconsistencies, we could see that the organization wasn't communicating in the way that we felt that we could deliver the right message. So the great thing about the design sprint was it brought people together. It brought everyone's mindset, and everyone started saying how much of a benefit it was that the teams actually collaborated and worked together. So after the design sprint, at the end of it, as I said, there's a prototype that gets created. And what we did is we went out and we tested this prototype to see the feedback on whether this works. And we got some really, really great results. And like I said, it's something that you can do at the end of that 4 days, and then you get results, and then you can see, okay, is this product, is this service going to work for us? So this was the benefit of the design sprint, and we got some interesting feedback. So users are looking for information about you and your product beyond your site. So one of the things that I wanted to call out is easy to identify our value proposition. If we go all the way back to the beginning of my talk, our messaging from the business was all about sales. And then also the customer said, well, I can't identify with any of your messaging. When we were saying, when we started testing our prototype, people could understand our value proposition, and what we were wanting to gain from them was the trust. So again, this changed the way that we were being perceived by our audience, just by creating a prototype that we knew that they wanted, and we're testing it with people to get that feedback. So then now our messaging was much more positive. You know, the message of keeping them safe and protected was clear. Comparison of offers and prices is recommended. So we definitely were seeing an uplift or a positive feedback versus to the feedback that we were getting when we just showed them our current offering. So at the end of that prototype, we are now in a phase of where we've been developing our new site. So this is an example of our brand new Aegon Seguros. Seguros is insurance in Spanish, offering, which we've been updating and going live. And it's been a great way of working with the organization. So What this has actually done is, from this design sprint, from this design thinking, from us speaking with the customer, the Aegon Spanish team has changed their way of working, seeing the value of engaging with customers, the value of working and collaborating together, the value of breaking down those silos and creating a product and a service that meets our customer needs. So now, from when I first started on this project, which was a year and a half ago, I mean, chalk and cheese, the way that they're working together. It's such a great way of working. And look, the great thing was this was all live with one another, me being able to travel to Spain or us collaborating together. And so this was what was great. We had that, consistent conversations and ways of working as you would pre current times. So this is an outcome of our, digital disruption pre-corona times. And now I would, before I go into that, some of the challenges that we did face was ownership. A lot of people don't like taking ownership, or feel that if they need to take ownership of a project or a product, they know that it's going to take up a lot of their time. And when I say time, people have their ways of working, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So trying to find owners for these products or projects was a challenge. Technologies, we had, as I mentioned, silos. So the IT stack and the development teams worked differently, and we had outdated systems, which we've now updated, but this is what took time. So again, reiterating that of the speed, it's been a project that's taken a long time due to the knowledge, due to the maturity of the organization and new ways of working. And then obviously the resources. Not everyone has that knowledge of design thinking and this new way of working. So having to train people up to scratch with this sort of thing did delay us, but we got there in the end. So as I've sort of mentioned, that was Spain, and they've come out of this great. They're doing amazing things, and I'm so proud. And then, funny enough, for 2020 digital transformation, COVID-19, I was assigned a new project, which I was going to be working on, and we were planning on, as you do, traveling and working with my colleagues. So I spoke about Spain earlier. This is a broker platform, which I was going to be working with the Turkish team. So you can only imagine what happened is we had organized all our design sprints, all our meetings, everything to go over to Turkey, had been conversing prior to this. And then we were told that we're not allowed to travel. And I've done many meetings or conversations virtually, but doing a virtual design sprint, which, as I mentioned, by going to Spain, and why I wanted to mention the previous project, is it's so much easier to be face-to-face with people, to do things live with one another, because the conversation is just so much more fluid. And then you're able to solve the issues, I believe, or much quicker. However, this is the times that we were faced with, and we had to move forward. So pretty much what happened is, from the design sprint that we had organized, we knew we had 1 week. We had to create 7 interviews across 7 countries with one goal. So when I say 7 interviews, we had 7 stakeholder interviews, and unfortunately, I can't share any screenshots or pictures of how we did. That's a bit confidential at the moment. However, in a week, we did 7 stakeholder interviews across the organization, and what this was a benefit was for our organization is learning on how we can communicate now virtually and capture the information that we still feel is necessary to get this job done virtually. And, you think to yourself, how are we going to do this? We're now stuck at home. I can't talk the way that I would normally talk or approach these people by knocking on their door or sitting in the office and getting that conversation happening. But you'd be surprised how great it was perceived and how keen and eager a lot of these stakeholders were in having these conversations, because firstly, we really did this design sprint at the beginning of Corona, and people were so receptive to just wanting to communicate, to wanting to engage. So I felt like we actually got better information from these stakeholder interviews than if we actually met face to face. So from the stakeholder interviews, we were able to capture all the information that we needed. So this is the business goals. So as I said, aligning business goals with our customer goals. So this is some of the feedback that we received from our broker platform. So what this broker platform is agents, so external agents selling insurance or selling life or non-life insurance products, have a platform, have a traditional way of working where they speak with their customers and they sell insurances. But what we were trying to create was a digital platform that would benefit or help the agents in doing their job further. And so from the stakeholders, and these are people within the organizations, we had a lot of questions to ask ourselves. You know, a lot of customers are being underserved. And as you would know, the times that we live in, people are becoming more savvy. Agents only selling products they have in their portfolio, agents not being cooperative. A lot of the feedback from the stakeholders is some of them are not digital savvy enough, so they don't feel comfortable with technology. There was no claim handlings in these platforms, and is there a sufficient appetite for this? Is this actually something where are we wasting our time in creating? And agents don't really know they have a problem until you show them the solution. So again, are we really solving an issue? We don't know, but we will find out. So this is what was great about doing these stakeholder interviews before designing anything in the organization and wasting time and effort. So what this broker platform, what we felt that what we needed to achieve is to increase effectiveness by offering leads, insights, advice, onboarding and service all in one platform for a multitude of products from different vendors, so not just from Aegon. So short of it, supporting agents with a digital enabled platform. So we're hoping that this platform would have all these features. So how are we going to achieve this from all this information we heard from the stakeholders? We had all these conversations with agents prior, and then, well, this is what we were going to do, a virtual design sprint. So something very similar, well, a sprint that we did in Spain, but we were going to bring it virtually. So this was going to be, again, amongst the Corona times. And I've never actually done one of these, and I've done many design sprints in my time as a designer. I actually have not engaged in a virtual design sprint. So this was going to be a challenge even for me, who is very confident in hosting and facilitating these design sprints. But during these times, I felt that this was going to be quite complex. And how was I going to manage this? Because again, this was with the Turkish team. I'm in Amsterdam. The team was in Turkey, and we also had another organization that were in Austria. So very different countries, trying to manage this virtually with tools that, even though we were using Microsoft Teams, we're engaging with a new platform called Miro. And so we were wondering, how are we going to do this? So this was my setup, and there's a bit of product placement there with some of my football team. But yeah, pretty much my laptop sitting either at my desk, on the couch, or on the floor, and this was how we were going to do the virtual design sprint. But we, as I mentioned, we used Microsoft Teams and we used Miro, a really great tool, and we were able to bring to life onto the platform what we would do in a design sprint. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, we had a number of people in the design sprint. There were 8 participants. However, we did have some people phone in to see how we were going with the sprint. So, sorry, I went a bit fast there. Here's just some screenshots just to show you on how we worked and how we were going to run these 4 days. And the virtual design sprint, to my surprise, was so great, was so effective, and so beneficial to our organization. It really, really helped. And it's felt like an external design sprint, but obviously virtual. and it helped so much. And a lot of this information from the seven stakeholder interviews would have not been so successful if we didn't have those interviews as well from the stakeholders to really understand the problem we were trying to solve. And then at the end of this design sprint, we were able to create a prototype, which we were also able to test with agents, live agents, while they were in lockdown as well. Unfortunately, I didn't take any screenshots to show how that played out. However, there was such positive feedback on the prototype that we created that there is now, this is the team that was part of the design sprint, just to give you an idea. It was received so well. If anything, I'm actually now more keen and eager, if we were to go back to a normality, to engage further with a virtual design sprint, because this organization, this team felt the benefits and saw the need, and now furthering the want into creating virtual design sprints. And again, it didn't take up, it didn't cost us money. It took time. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of frustrations, which I'll go into a little bit further, but every single team member and the product owner and the CEO saw so much benefits out of doing a virtual design sprint. So some of the challenges that I do want to point out is, as I mentioned, it was with Turkish team, and my first language is English, so I'm very fluent. However, not everyone in the room, especially if you're working on a project that is to start off with in the Turkish market, it's similar to what I was saying about Spain. There was a language barrier. The difference of doing a virtual versus a face-to-face is there's that conversation you could have with your hands or your facials to break down that language barrier. So it was very, very draining in trying to make sure that we were talking the same language, which brings me to my next part, maturity. Not doing a virtual design sprint versus a face-to-face one just goes to show how mature some organizations are who have never done one actually before, and then you're throwing them in the deep end to do a digital one. It just showed that the organization wasn't as mature because they had never done one before, but we did come out in the end in a positive light. So, I think training or preparing someone for a design sprint is necessary. The speed, because we had to change our way of working from live face-to-face to then now virtual, we have noticed that the speed of these projects and the speed of getting things done is much slower. But we're working on that, and I'm sure a lot of these organizations are starting to change the way that they're working based on this and time. At the same time, you still think you're living in pre-COVID time, so you can get things done in a much okay, this will take us 6 months, but really you're still working virtually, and how are you managing that expectation? So my key learnings from these design sprints from pre-corona and corona times is that you have to trust the process, and you have to just speak about this consistently with one another, because if you're not prepared for this process, then I think it's a little bit harder to gain that trust. So bringing that to the organization at the beginning. Listen to your customers. There is so many ways to access customers these days, even pre-corona, on how you could speak to them virtually. Now you have the opportunity to really disrupt those traditions, disrupt that transformation, and find out how you can speak to your customers virtually. And we're now doing this even more or so, and it's quite critical in achieving what you want to get out of your products and services. Align business and customer goals. So again, hearing the business, hearing the customer, merging those and coming to a happy medium, working together. I would not be able to do half the things that I've done or achieve the things that I've done with Aegon if it wasn't for my collaboration with my teammates. So work together and you'll be able to, make a process, get shit done. Stop sitting there talking about it. Just get out there, just do it. it's not that hard. Once you start, you'll see how awesome it is to get it done. And well, while you're doing it, disrupt tradition. So that's it from me. I'm now going to be available to come online and take some questions. So thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed the talk.